Talking all things Georgia baseball as the Dogs prepare for their first Super Regional since 2008 when they welcomed the NC State Wolfpack to Foley Field. Here to help me break it all down, our good friend Palmer Thombs. He is a beat writer for DawgsHQ, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Georgia Bulldogs baseball. He takes time out of his busy schedule to join the show. Palmer, what's going on, man? I appreciate you taking the time.
No, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to be talking Georgia baseball. I mean, as somebody that, has passionately covered Georgia baseball the last several seasons, you can tell that the fan base has been anxiously awaiting this. I when I was in school, I knew a bunch of guys that lived up there in the greenhouse and, dropped in from time to time to see a game up there and take in that kudzu hill environment. And man, Georgia fans have been anxiously awaiting this. 2018, 2019, they host regionals and drop those in the finals to an ACC team. 2020 was a season that had so much promise. And, when it ended due to COVID, they were the number 2 team in the country, headed down to Florida for a series with number 1 Gators. And so much promise there. And then just so much disappointment the last few seasons, haven't lived up to expectations. They make the coaching change and, we're just one day shy of a year removed from when Georgia announced its hiring of Wes Johnson. And we're talking the Georgia Bulldogs in a Super Regional. I think Georgia fans are counting this as everything else is just icing on the cake.
Palmer, let's start there because I do want to look back on how it happened. Obviously, Dawgs winning the Athens Regional, but I mean, you mentioned like the pulse of the fan base and you're a Georgia man through and through. And again, it's been 2008 since the last time we were talking about the Georgia Bulldogs in the Super Regional, which is hard to believe. I mean, what is the excitement level, the jubilation? What's the overall feel right now in the vibe around Bulldog fans as, again, Super Regional baseball at Foley Field? It approaches for the first time in over a decade.
Yeah, so I'll take you back to 2008 because this is kind of just funny parallel between the 2 years. You may know where I'm going with this, but 2008 Regional, Athens Regional, Georgia beats Georgia Tech to advance out of the regional to the Super Regionals. And who do they host? NC State. So they hosted NC State in 2008 to, took 2 of 3 from the Wolfpack there to advance to the College World Series. Georgia has that same path and is looking for the same result this go around. I think with the, fan base, it's just one that has been so anxiously on pins and needles awaiting something really good. And basketball hasn't been that. And, obviously football has been so successful. But Georgia fans, a lot of them, I would definitely say that there's some casual Georgia fans that are just football through and through. And like we were talking about before we came on air, it's, 24/7, 365, it's football season. But I think that there's always an excitement when you can look at it and it be basketball season. It can be baseball season. And so many SEC teams and programs and athletic departments have had success in other sports. And I don't know if I would say Georgia fans have been envious of that because of the success that they've had in football, but they've definitely wanted it. And so, with the talent that comes out of the state of Georgia and has been going across the country, across the SEC, I think Georgia fans have just been, like I said, on pins and needles awaiting this kind of success for baseball. And, Georgia's pouring some money into the baseball program that they necessarily haven't necessarily done recently. They've got some upcoming renovations to Foley Field that have a lot of people excited about. From a player perspective, they've got, one of the most exciting players in the country right now, if not the most exciting player in the country. And all of that combined has just been such a fun team and season to cover.
So, Palmer, Georgia's path to get here, they win the Athens Regional, take down UNC Wilmington, Georgia Tech, and Army. It was a little more exciting than I think some folks expected, certainly myself. I mean, it got going in really quick fashion with Army kind of punching the Dogs in the face first, but Georgia able to navigate through that thriller against Georgia Tech to cap it off, which I tell you, Palmer, that play that, the PFP, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, Georgia Tech's got the bases loaded. A run gives them a walk-off, and that PFP or the pitcher is able to go over there, stretch his leg. I mean, the entire play was insane, and I think it's one of those plays we look back on. Let's say if the Dogs are in Omaha this time next week, we might look back on that play and say, like, that was the defining play that got Georgia to that point. Either way, though, What were your biggest takeaways? I picked Georgia to get through the regional, and most folks were talking last week that Georgia had one of the most manageable regionals. There were maybe more tense moments than some folks expected, but all in all, the Dawgs got the job done.
Yeah, I mean, that PFP, I mean, just like you said, that's not how you draw it up in February when you're going through those preseason. Wes Johnson, this coaching staff would have liked to see maybe a little bit cleaner of an execution. But as Corey Collins said about Chandler Marsh, he got his big ol' ass over there. So no, I think, you're right. It did start with that Army game. And, I said on our message board today, I wouldn't say that Georgia was lucky to get through that, but they were definitely fortunate. That's an Army team that's been to 6 straight regionals, and Georgia, had its hands full, and, a disciplined group, an early game. It didn't have the night atmosphere that we saw on Saturday and Sunday. A good atmosphere, a Friday afternoon in Athens. People wanted to come out and experience the NCAA tournament at Foley Field. But there's something a little bit different when it gets dark and you're under those lights, in the classic city. So, I would say that they were fortunate to get through that. And, they didn't get the best of starts from Leighton Finley. That they needed, Georgia's strength is not its pitching staff, especially when you turn to the bullpen. And so you kind of felt like you needed a really good start from Leighton Finley, not just for that particular game, but for the whole weekend, because you didn't want to start burning through pitchers early on. And so they get through that game. They win by 1. Like you said, maybe a little bit more, blood pressure was up a little bit more for that game than it, folks expected. But then, you turn to the UNC Wilmington game and they jump on them early. And the grand slam from Colby Branch, his 4th of the year, sets a new school record. That's when it felt like Georgia really just kept clicking. And so they roll through that one, win 11-2, and it's on to the region final. And you feel good about it because it's such a huge advantage to get through that 1-0 game, 2-0, and get to that region final and have a mulligan if you were to lose Sunday night. And I still felt very confident about Georgia's chances to get out of that regional, even when they were down 5-2, 5-3 through 7, because you knew that they had a mulligan in their back pocket. And that they were going to be able to come out on Monday and, play another game. And, you don't necessarily want to get into those winner take all situations. You can see around the country how those things shake out. And, it truly becomes a 50-50 situation. Sometimes the better team wins. Sometimes the team that, maybe is playing a little bit hotter baseball wins. But, I think Georgia, was able to manage that situation against Georgia Tech, the emotions of that game. And really, it clicked in that 8th inning when Trey Phelps hit the home run. It felt like Georgia to that point, that 2nd inning, they give up 4 runs. Zach Harris maybe looked a little bit rattled on the mound for Georgia, and that, they made some mistakes. They cost themselves some runs. And then, on the offensive side of things, Georgia was hitting the ball really hard, but it was going right at guys. And you just felt like at some point that was going to change. But, through 7 innings, you're down 5-3 and nothing seemed to really change. And all of a sudden Phelps, gives that Georgia spark. He's been a phenomenal freshman for the Bulldogs this year, really has stepped it up late in the season, got banged up mid-year, had a knee injury that he suffered against Missouri and missed a couple of series. And since he's come back, he earned SEC Freshman of the Week with 4 home runs in 3 games against South Carolina. That was the second to last regular season series. And, that home run was just such a boost of energy. I talked to Corey Collins after the game and I was like, hey, how much did that feel like a relief? You guys finally just get one, one of those hard hit balls finally goes out of this park, because that's been Georgia's MO this year. They've been a home run hitting team, especially at home. And so he was like, yeah, Trey, that's his MO. He's that guy. He's always got some confidence. He told us that, Trey was walking up there and singing his walk-up song. He's just got a certain swagger to him that you don't see in a lot of freshmen. He does not act like a freshman when he's out there. He's got a lot of confidence. And so Georgia's got a lot of confidence in him, and rightfully so. And, he provides that spark. Colby Branch hits another home run, another leadoff home run. So they led off both the 8th and 9th innings with home runs, ties the game. Georgia gets in a little bit of a pinch there in the bottom half of the inning, but ultimately in the top of the 10th, they take advantage of an opportunity An error on Georgia Tech, throws over the first base and on a sacrifice bunt that was just supposed to move the runners from first and second to second and third. And all of a sudden Phelps comes around and scores the go-ahead run. Georgia takes advantage of it again with runners at second and third now. And Corey Collins finds a 2-gapper, 2-out double and base is clear and Georgia's up 8-5. And, you felt like you could finally breathe. That game for a sec, was you were just holding your breath, waiting for Georgia to get that hit. They get that hit. They tie it up. Okay, fine. Hey, that we're not losing this game in regulation, in the 9 innings. And that you're going to extras and you've got a chance. And, I think that with this Georgia offense, the thing that has been all year, they're so explosive and they can just do it in a heartbeat. And so as long as they've got a chance, as long as they've got a couple of at-bats from top to bottom of this order, somebody can provide a spark. And that was certainly the case on Sunday night.
Palmer, you mentioned Trey Phelps. I have to ask, does he have the best home run celebration in college baseball? We posted the video of not just the dog mask, because others, including Charlie Condon, Corey Collins, others have put that on, but after the home run he hit, to put on the mask and then act like a dog and do the Ole Miss Egg Bowl celebration where he lifts
the fire hydrant.
The fire hydrant. That was an elite home run celebration.
That was. I did enjoy seeing that. And I was talking to some folks and they were like, man, I would normally just like not enjoy seeing that. And, that feels wrong. But in that kind of setting between two rivals, anything goes. And for a freshman to have that, and like I said, the way that Georgia fans were just kind of holding their breath, waiting for something good to happen, it was just a total release of all that, built up energy. And so, yeah, that was a fun celebration to see.
So, Palmer, we look ahead to this weekend, 3-game series, if you will, the Super Regionals against the NC State Wolfpack. They will come to town to take on the Dawgs at Foley Field after winning the Raleigh Regional, navigating through that fairly easily, if you will, taking down James Madison in the final game to win the regional. You look at NC State, Palmer, what jumps out to you? I mean, again, the numbers aren't all that impressive when it comes to state, but they simply just find ways to win. They're one of those teams, Palmer, where it seems the sum is greater than all of the individual parts, if that makes sense. Because, again, I don't think there's anything numbers-wise you look at and say, man, we really got to watch out for this. They're just a scrappy ball club that finds ways to get the job done. What have you found at NC State? What do you think the greatest challenges for Georgia will be this weekend against the Wolfpack?
Yeah, admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of NC State baseball this year. I'd be lying to you if I said I had, and my eyes have been more glued to the SEC than the ACC. But that is certainly a conference that, is a preeminent conference in college baseball. It is those two conferences, ACC, SEC. Each have 5 programs in the round of 16, the Super Regionals. And, in fact, you look at the ACC, there are 5 teams that advanced, advanced out of regionals, all advanced out of regionals with SEC teams. So there were 6 regionals that had both an ACC and an SEC team. 5 of them were won by ACC teams. And so, granted, all of those were host teams. They really should have won. I mean, Florida State over Alabama, North Carolina, LSU was a fantastic series to watch, those two. And, LSU, the 2 very, impressive programs, some of the top programs in college baseball. Mississippi State was up at Virginia. You had Vanderbilt that kind of laid an egg at Clemson. And then there's one that South Carolina at NC State. So I think that to advance out of the ACC, to have played an ACC schedule says that you are a really good team. You look down their schedule at the, tail end of the season. They win a series against Clemson, who's a national seed. They win a series against North Carolina, who's a national seed. They took care of. They played UNC Wilmington, who made the NCAA tournament. They took care of business. Split a series with Florida State, only got to play 2 there. They take care of business against Virginia. They take care of business against swept Wake Forest to end that season. Didn't have the greatest of showings in the ACC championships. ACC tournament there, but like you said, they take care of business in their home regional. The only time that they were trailing, I think, was the 3rd inning of the first game against Bryant. And after that, it was, they were rolling. And so from what I understand about NC State, and what I've listened to and heard about the Wolfpack there, it feels a lot like Georgia. They feel really good about their offense. The pitching has been a question mark, but it has kind of come around. And I think that, that creates a really interesting matchup here, because you've got two teams that are feeling better about their pitching as the season has gone along and have always felt pretty good about their offense. So, with Georgia, you've got guys that have emerged. Colton Smith has been a really good arm for them. Leighton Finley, despite a maybe disappointing outing against Army, comes back and, gives Georgia 3 really good outs against Georgia Tech in that region final in the 10th inning, short rest there. You feel better about your bullpen. Zach Harris, had a fantastic outing, career high 6 innings. Believe he struck out 7. So Georgia's feeling better about its pitching. NC State is feeling better about its pitching. Both teams have always felt good about their offense. And so to me, that sets up a really interesting matchup. And, it's one that you look at it in terms of the seeding, the 8 seed Florida State advances, but the 9 seed Oklahoma doesn't. You've got the 7 and the 10 here. So this is in terms of seeding, this is the best series that you've got. And so again, that ACC SEC battle is going to be interesting to watch. You've got it here, and then you've also got it in Clemson, where Florida heads, to take on the Tigers. So really interested to see how those two leagues duke it out in those two series, and really interested to see how Georgia and NC State match up.
Palmer, before we get you out of here, again, taking a look at the Athens Super Regional. Saturday, Sunday, Monday is the slate. Noon pitch, first pitch for both of those games. Monday, of course, if necessary. What's the X factor for you, the key to the weekend for the Dogs, and is there a key player you look at that you feel like needs to have a big weekend for Georgia to punch their ticket to Omaha?
Yeah, the key player, Charlie Condon.
Easy answer, right?
It's an easy answer there. You really want to see him have a big series and constantly be on base. And, it felt like he wasn't necessarily, he didn't outside of that first at bat against Army, where he barreled one up and, sent it way into that left field parking lot. It didn't really feel like he got everything in any of the pitches that he saw. Now, he didn't see a ton of great pitches. And so I think with Charlie, the key is he's got to be patient and not press too much. He can't, be like, hey, I'm not seeing pitches. I've got to do something with, make the most out of what I'm seeing. Take your walks, man. Take whether it's intentional and they put you on first base, or they're just going to throw you a bunch of, what, just take it. Take the walks, get on base, and feel confident about the guys that you've got around him. I think the coaching staff is going to, kind of hammer that message home to him this week is, look, man, we understand what you've done all year long. We understand the pressure that you may feel to send this team back to Omaha for the first time since 2008. Let it come to you. So I think that's important for Georgia. I also think, the important part is the pitching. And it's always going to be the important part for Georgia because, like I said, it's not their strength. They don't necessarily have a ton of, they may not even have 3 weekend arms that you can feel good about. Colton Smith left Saturday's game against UNC Wilmington with a little bit of a cramp. And so I would say he's questionable for this weekend. And he's been maybe Georgia's best pitcher down the stretch. So you feel good about Leighton Finley. You feel good about Zach Harris. I would say you feel better about Finley than you do Harris. And there's a reason that he's been your Friday night starter all season. Harris has come along and has shown really great things, but he's susceptible to one of those second innings that we saw against Tech where he gave up 4 runs. And so, beyond those guys, what does it look like in the bullpen? Can Josh Roberge and Brian Zeldin and Christian Maracna and Jarvis Evans and Chandler Marsh, those 5 guys, so key to Georgia's success. Daniel Patisak had a really impressive performance against Tech, where he struck out, the side in an inning. And so can he, put that together again? Matthew Hoskins came out of the bullpen, didn't have his best stuff, but can he bounce back from that? Because he's shown really good stuff. So I think it's going to be very important that Georgia, especially, where it looks like Charlie Goldstein's probably not going to be available. He's, was Georgia's ace pitcher, has battled injuries all year long. left the game against Tech with another injury after returning from an injury a month prior. That was his first pitch, first at bat back. Without him, probably you really need to count on the guys that you've got, and just get quality outings. It doesn't have to be perfect. You've got a really powerful offense that can put up runs, but especially against an NC State team where maybe pitching isn't their strong suit. I think that you've just got to have quality outings out of those pitchers, and then the offense can pick up the slack.
Georgia, NC State at Foley Field. All gets going on Saturday this weekend. Dawgs looking to punch their ticket to Omaha. Palmer Thombs of DawgsHQ. Palmer, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Always a pleasure, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Absolutely.